I'm going to talk about a concept that I think confuses a lot of folks who are used to living in high tax Western countries, who are used to paying high taxes. And that's the idea that there are countries in the world that may not be tax-free countries, but where they will roll out the red carpet for you, the foreigner, that if you move there, bring your income, bring your business, they will give you special tax incentives. A lot of people think this is unfair. A lot of people don't understand it. I'm going to explain why it makes sense, why you should take advantage of it, and how it all started with one nasty comment. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of this book and the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. So I've been saving, our team has been saving a nasty comment. We keep a whole list of ideas for things to talk about here. If you've got an idea, you can always leave it in the comment section. But this is a nasty comment that we got some time ago from someone who doesn't agree with the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle. And I wanted to use it to share with you why I believe that tax incentives are not only something that are worthwhile, but something that you should feel good about using. So the comment, number one, it's from someone who's anonymous. Number two, it's a bit grammatically incorrect, so I'm going to try and stumble through it. But he, me, doesn't live there. So he's using the country and its people for the benefits, but he's not adding anything to the country, the economy, or its people. He sucks, S-U-X, so very literate person. I'm not going to be the lady who doth protest too much for very long, but I want to cover a couple of quick things. Number one, there is such a thing as tourism. And what I always want to ask these people who talk about, where someone should pay, I have a tax home. Anyone who is going to work with me, generally speaking, they're going to have a tax home. Where are you liable for tax? Countries are allowed to set their own criteria for how that works. And so that's an important step to have. Once you have that tax home, whether you pay a lot of tax or no tax in that place, are you allowed to go to Mexico for 2 weeks on a vacation? I always ask these European guys, these social, and Americans now too, these social justice types. If you go to Cancun for 2 weeks, are you going to send 1/26 of your income tax to Mexico? Why not? You're using their services. You're using everything that's there. Why should you take a vacation and go and dump your trash and use the services and depending on where you're from, urinate on fountains in the middle of the city square, and then just be able to go back home and give all your tax to the Netherlands or to the UK or to the US? Why doesn't Mexico get part of your tax? Why doesn't Myanmar get part of your tax? There is such a thing as tourism. And so the interesting question is, when do you cross that line, right? What's the challenge of being a perpetual tourist if you're spending 2 weeks or 4 weeks or who knows how long in a given country? Now, let's talk about the economic impact part, and that will segue into exactly why a number of countries offer these incentives for foreigners. I did a rather back-of-the-envelope study, but I did put a lot of thought into it a while back when I was in Malaysia. I have a home in Malaysia. I spent some time in Malaysia. And I wanted to see, what is my economic contribution to Malaysia? And then I wanted to see, what is it that the average person in Malaysia, the Malaysian with a job, contributes to Malaysia. And I figured out that based on my spending 4 months there, that's what a perfect trifecta would be, 4 months in 3 different places, lifestyle benefits, potential tax benefits. All right, so 4 months in Malaysia. I looked at all the products I buy, went through all my credit card statements, all the things that I'm purchasing, restaurant bills, all of that. And I figured out that my contribution through sales tax, they call it HST now, they changed it, is more than what the average Malaysian pays in income tax, actually by a lot. And so why do countries say we're going to have a territorial tax system where if you work and you've got a job locally or you invest locally, you pay tax? But if all of your investments and your companies and your income comes from overseas, we're not going to tax you. Why do countries have non-domicile tax programs where, hey, we'll tax you on the money that you bring in to live on, but again, you're allowed to have stuff outside of the country. There are some rules, but we're not going to tax you on the whole kit and caboodle. Why do countries have various lump sum programs where you pay a fixed amount of money and you can make all the money you want after that once you pay the fixed annual tax? There are numerous types of tax systems like this that are used, including in some very developed Western countries. Switzerland has long had a lump sum tax program. Italy now has one. You see Portugal with their NHR tax program. Then you see traditional, countries like Malaysia and Panama and others that just don't tax foreign income. Singapore, Philippines, etc. And the reason is very simple. These are countries that are looking to either bring capital to their often small country like a Singapore, right? They realize they need people to come and bring their talents, bring their capital to invest. buy expensive homes, contribute to the local economy they're trying to bring. It's the same story in places like Singapore, places like Dubai. They also realize that, we need to bring in more tax revenue. We need to bring in more revenue to, help our industries, because the world is becoming a more competitive place. So if you move to the UK or Switzerland and you pay some, low amount of tax, number one, you're paying more tax than the average person who has a job to begin with. I mean, you go to Switzerland, hundreds of thousands of Swiss francs potentially even more, that you might be paying for the privilege of living in Switzerland. What is the average Swiss worker paying? Less than that, right? When you look at any of these lump sum taxes, when you look at the money that a non-dom brings into a country, they're going to be paying more to begin with. And so, my argument would be, in a sense, everyone says, what are you contributing to the country? People have criticized Bill Gates for paying $10 billion in taxes. Now, the US government wastes $10 billion very quickly, probably in the time it takes you to watch this video, if not sooner. But Bill Gates has given $10 billion. What have you given, complainer? Why don't we divvy it up? If we wanted to be totally fair, why don't we split it up and say, hey, here's everyone's bill. You've got a family, here's your bill. You get the same military protection that Bill Gates does, right? So here's your bill. And so I look at it as, if you can bring in a person who wouldn't live in your country otherwise, and they can pay the same amount or double or 5x or 10x or whatever the tax is of the average person, plus they're going to go out, as I do in Malaysia, during the lockdown. Our deal every day was, who's going to go to the grocery store and buy an expensive bottle of wine that has huge import tariffs on it and that has taxes, because Malaysia is a Muslim country, they tax alcohol. And so the wine that you pay $100 for, you probably pay $25 for in Europe. It's not a country to go if you want to buy a lot of wine, unless you just don't mind, paying more for the privilege. It's what I call the nomad tax. I'm very happy to contribute to Malaysia's economy in that way. And so when you add all that up, would you rather have restaurants, of which in Malaysia you could swing a dead cat and hit 12 restaurants at any point in the city. Maybe more than 12 restaurants, quite frankly. And there are a lot of restaurants, and a lot of them are empty. Would you rather have people coming and going to the Italian restaurant that maybe Malaysians don't want to eat at and keeping that place afloat for a while longer? I look back at my time in the radio business. We did a lot of infomercial placements for radio stations. We worked with a lot of tiny radio stations that were really struggling to get by. I remember one guy, we couldn't disagree more politically, but he owned a radio station in Columbus, Ohio. And even though he didn't agree with my political, we didn't talk politics, but I think we kind of knew each other. He was very liberal. I was, much more, conservative or libertarian. And he said, without your business, without these gold shows and colon cleanse shows, he said, we would go off the air. And so I think the same principle applies when it comes to countries. If I'm Malaysia, I feel pretty good in my decision to say, if you're making money from our country, okay, fine, we're going to tax you. I may agree or disagree with taxes, the level of taxes, but to say, a guy like Andrew, someone watching this video, someone who's a nomad capitalist, if they've got a choice of over 200 places to live in the world, why don't we make ourselves competitive to where they can come and live here and bring their spending, because we're going to be better off with that. Now, a country like the United States may not benefit from the system. My response to that, when people say, well, of course the UAE can afford to have, of course Monaco can afford not to have taxes. They're small, they got gambling, they have, what do you care? Do you think this guy who left a comment, you think he's not trying to get as much of his as possible? I'm sitting here saying to myself, I'd like to contribute to the economy. And you know what? If Malaysia said we're going to have a lump sum tax like Switzerland, pay us $50,000 a year to live there, I would do it, and I would encourage people to consider that as a strong place to go and make it their tax home. But there are countries out there that are looking to bring wealth to their shores. They want people like myself, like you, to come and buy homes. Perhaps it's a country where they've got a lot of housing inventory. I've never said Malaysia is the number one investment housing market in the world. I do think the currency has some potential. I do think in the long run, Asia will do very well. Right now, Malaysia is a place to affordably buy real estate compared to other places in Asia. It's a great place to live, but I'm not planning on making a fortune. So I'm going there because I like Malaysia, because they treat me very well. I just bought a much bigger home there that we're renovating. And so I'm putting money in, taking foreclosures off the balance sheet of the banks. In the past, I bought properties in Malaysia from locals who were investors who needed liquidity. We need more of that in countries. And I think the countries that realize that bringing people in who are going to go to the nice restaurants, drink the nice wines, buy expensive properties, go out and contribute to the economy, they're getting more money from those of us who are going and acting like that than they're getting from the average person. Not to judge the average person, of course, but simply to say, if you're paying $3,000 or $4,000 a year in income tax, and you're taking a job, and you're using the public transport, and you're using other things that are subsidized, it's a lot better to have a guy who comes in and just drops a couple $100,000 into your economy over the course of a year, doesn't use any services, just wants to be left alone, and they will reciprocate and leave you alone. Malaysia is just one example. You've got developed countries in Europe that have programs like this. Italy, pay them 100,000 euros. Not many Italians paying 100,000 euros in tax. Now, the challenge in so many of the countries where people are either fighting against this idea, or if you're like me and you're, 15 years ago, you're sitting in the US, you think it's almost too good to be true, because you've been so convinced by everyone around you that if you've never contributed enough. And I say that, if you're contributing 100,000 euros and the average person's contributing 20,000 euros or 10,000 euros, does it really matter that you made 100 times the money when you're using the exact amount of services, or potentially even less? To me, that's a lot more fair. It may not even be still perfectly fair, but at least it's giving people an opportunity. And so when you look at countries out there are plenty of places you can go, including for the people who are looking for, I don't want to go to Malaysia, I don't want to go to Panama, that seems too, up and coming. Great, go to Switzerland, go to Italy, go to Ireland, go to Malta. Lots of places are using systems like this because they realize they need capital. If you go there, you can go where you're treated best. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.